Now, you see, today we will be dealing with the sense organ. Now, the basic sense organ that is in your syllabus is ear and eye. So, today I will be dealing with eye. So, what is basically an eye? Eye, we have a pair of eyes, that is the sense of vision. That means it causes the sensation of sight. We can see objects whenever light falls on it. Any object, it is visible to us only when it is in the presence of light. We don't have a dark vision. We cannot see things in the darkness. Why? Because that is a completely different phenomena. Certain nocturnal animals, for example, leopards, jackal, tiger, lion, they have got the night vision. That means their eye has got certain different structure that helps them to see objects in the darkness. But normal human being, we are capable of seeing things whenever the light falls in it. Why is it that? Why? Because our lens follows. We have got a lens that is convex in nature, and that particular convex lens has got the power of accommodation and follows the simple rule of refraction. When light falls through it, okay, it enters through the pupil is the aperture. It is simple like a pinhole camera. Okay, cornea focuses through the pupil, the light enters and it goes through the lens. Now from there it goes to the retina. Now retina, what happens in retina? There are photosensitive cells that converts the sensitive cells converts the light energy into electrical signals, and that electrical signals goes into the optic center of the brain, and that causes a sensation of sight. Okay, so when we will be dealing with the human eye, we'll go into the structural detail and the parts that is responsible for the sensation of sight. Okay, and there are few common defects that is known as hypermetropia, myopia, presbyopia and astigmatism. Now this portion goes into your physics section but not in a biology syllabus. Okay, but still we'll do it in a short brief form. Okay, now here if you can see this is actually the diagram showing the human eye. This is basically the structure of the eye, and here you can see this portion. See, this portion is actually the layer of the cornea or outermost layer. Okay, now beyond that we have a sclera layer, sclera choroid layer. Okay, so this particular layer gives protection, and outwardmost we have the conjunctiva layer that gives protection from any other foreign objects. Now here you see these are the two chambers. Okay, this is the lens, you can see it from the figure. This is the cornea that gives you the focusing. These are iris. What are iris? These are muscles attached to the lens so that the lens is in a position, and you have see here the ciliary muscles, okay, for it. And these are fluid filled chambers. This is the smaller one, that is a thick, denser, more jelly like, so it's aqueous, and this is the vitreous humor. Okay, so aqueous chamber and vitreous chamber. Now here you see this layer. Focus on this layer. Now this layer is basically the retina. What is retina? This is the place where you find the rod cells, the cone cells present here, and here it is the phobia. What is phobia? This is known as the yellow spot where the image perception is there. And here you see, here it is a blind spot, and this blind spot is actually the layer where you see the optic nerve leaves this. Okay. So here you see the outer layer, the sclera layer, the choroid layer. Okay, sclera and choroid. See, two layers, and the inner one is here the cornea, and cornea is only 2/3 portion. Okay, and iris is actually, this gives you the color of the eye. Some have brown eye, some have black eyes, some have bluish green eye. So this is given by this iris muscle, and here is the aperture through which, see, we have got a here I have told you the power of accommodation. So what is power of accommodation? It is the ability of this lens. See, this lens can focus. If we want to see objects at a nearer range, this one will flatten out. This one will flatten out and we can see it. Okay. And I'm sorry, this will become condensed. This will shrink. This will shrink so that this area decreases and we can see the object from a nearer range. And if we want to see things at a longer distance, this will become thinner and it will become lengthwise, it would increase. So this contraction and relaxation of this lens is known as the power of accommodation. And we have got a far point. Okay, far point means that is the minimum length through which we can see, or the length of perception, that is 25 meters, 25 centimeter. Okay, now you see, if you can see, you see, the adult human eyeball is nearly a spherical structure. The wall of the eyeball is composed of 3 layers. The external layer is a condensed it is connective tissue, that is known as a sclera. Okay, the anterior portion of this layer is called the cornea. The middle layer is called the choroid. Now mainly contains blood vessels, looks bluish in color. The choroid layer is thin over the posterior 2/3 of the eyeball, and I said kids, you have ciliary muscles. You have ciliary bodies. The ciliary body itself forms a pigment and opaque structure called the iris. I told you, and this is the visible colored portion of the eye. See, I said this is the, and this they contains a crystalline lens. If you see the structure again, and this leads to a ligament known as a ciliary body. The aperture surrounded by the iris is called the pupil, and the diameter of the pupil regulates the muscle fiber of the iris. Okay. Now you see the retina. What I want to focus here is the retina. Retina is the place where the optic nerve leads, and it contains 3 layers. Okay. Now see the 3 layers what the retina contains. It is neural cells from inside to out, ganglion cell, bipolar cell, and photoreceptor cells. Okay. Here, so this is the retina that contains 3 layers of neural cells. This retina portion, this is very important. It is made up of ganglion cell, bipolar cell, and photoreceptor cell. And this is where, see, light enters from here, gets focused here, this portion, retinal layer, it becomes focused here. And what happens? This receptor cells, what does they do? They take the light receptors, okay, light energy, and gets converted into electrical energy and electrical impulse rather. Now that conducts through the optic nerve. See, it leaves from here, and from here it goes to, where does it go? It goes to the cortex region of the brains, and this is the blind spot. Blind spot means if anything is focused on the blind spot, we cannot see, and this is phobia. Phobia is the place, it's a nerve center, and this is the point of perception where we can see. Okay. Now you see, if you can focus on the screen, you see there are 2 types of photoreceptors. 2 types of photoreceptor cells, namely the rods and the cones, and these cell contains light sensitive protein. Light sensitive protein, and that is known as photopigments. The daylight, that is phototropic vision, that is responsible, and colored vision, therefore the cone cells, and night vision, whatever we can see, or if in the dim light, that is known as rod cells. The rod contains, see, purplish red protein called rhodopsin, of visual purple, which contains a derivative of vitamin A. See, we all have heard that vitamin A is responsible for good vision. Why? Because it actually it helps or boosts up the rod cells. In human eye, there are 3 type of cone cells that possesses one characteristic photopigment that respond to green light, red, green and blue light. The sensation of the color is a various combination of these cones and cells, and these cones are stimulated equally. A sensation of white light it produces. Now, as you all know that you have read in your physics classes that white spectrum, what we see, the 7 color that it split from the white light. That means what? All the color joins together to give you white color. So basically our eyes have the perception of red, green and blue light, and they all mix together to show you the white light. Now you see, optic nerve leaves the eye with the retinal blood vessels, where the retinal blood vessels enter in at a point medieval to it and slightly above the posterior pole of the eyeball. We have already seen it in the diagram. Now see, photoreceptor cells are not present in that region and hence it is called blind spot. I told you that blind spot, when anything we see it, we cannot see. And the posterior eye lateral, okay, now you see, okay, phobia. Now phobia, you see, blind spot we have already discussed. Okay, now see, the posterior pole of the eye lateral to the blind spot is called the phobia. Phobia is the thinned out portion of the retina where only cones are densely packed. You see, that is more important. Phobia, the cone cells are densely packed and it is the point where visual activity is the greatest. The space between the cornea and lens is known as aqueous chamber, thin watery fluid, and the space between the lens and the retina is the vitreous chamber or vitreous humor is present there. So what happens? When the light ray falls on the retina through the cornea, it generates a potential impulse in the rod and the cone cells. As mentioned earlier, the photosynthesis compound, I said that rods and the cones or opsin or retinal aldehyde, that light induces dissociation of the retinal opsin. That is the structure of the opsin that causes membrane permeability change, and as a result the potential difference is generated in the photoreceptor. Simply it's C, you don't have to go into that detail. Okay, basically what you have to know is the light signals is converted into electrical signals. Okay, now light induces dissociation of the retinal, that is the opsin, resulting in the change of the structure of the opsin that causes a membrane permeability. As a result, potential difference is generated to the electric cells. Okay, now you see, these signals are generated potential to the ganglion cells through the bipolar cells. This action, only that this portion is see, the action potential impulse is transmitted by the optic nerve to the visual cortex. This is very important. Visual cortex, where the neural impulse is analyzed and the image formed on the retina is recognized based on earlier memory and experience. So what is it? We see through the brain. That means what images we are visualizing it. It is actually the brain gives you the signal of what we are seeing. Okay, so I'll be giving you these along with my video, so you go through it clearly. Okay, so this is the thing, this is the lens, this is the phobia, blind spot, and this is the diagram.